The fundamentals of grid drawing are simple. You put a grid on your riddled image and a grid with the same number of squares on your drawing paper. You then copy the image square by square and erase the grid when you're done. It gets more complicated if you're using a grid to enlarge or shrink a drawing. In this example, we have a small image that we would like to enlarge to fit our drawing page. First, I grid the original. Choose a unit of measurement that is easy to work with, round numbers like 1 centimeter or 2 centimeters. A grid with small squares gives you more control, but is also more time-consuming. To make sure my lines are straight, I'm going to be measuring the top and bottom. And then I will connect the dots to get me a straight line. So I'm halfway done the grid. Notice how on the right-hand side here we have a line that is not quite 1 centimeter. We're looking at about a remainder of perhaps half. So in this case, as long as that skinny sliver is on the same side, I'm okay. You just don't want to make a mistake and have it skinny on this side at the bottom and skinny on that side at the top. I'll do the same thing on the long sides now, using the exact same measurement of 1 centimeter in this case. At this point, check to make sure that your squares are actually square, that your lines are straight, and then it is worth it, please, to count the number of squares you have. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and a half across. And on the way down, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 and a quarter perhaps. So I need to know those numbers so that when I make my grid on my new piece, I will not be having the wrong number of squares. So now that I've got my original grid done, I have to draw a grid with the same number of squares on my drawing paper. And I can't assume that the pages are the same proportion. They're going to be close, but not exactly the same. So there are lots of ways to do this. You can do mathematical cross multiplication, etc. if you need to make this as big as possible on the page. But I found the simplest way, if you're a beginner, to do this is just to multiply the longest side here by a factor of 1.5 or by a factor of 2, and then make sure it still fits on the page, and if it does, then that will give you an easy, nice round number to use. So here we have 13 squares down, and that's 13 centimeters. And this page here, when I measure it, is going to be almost 28 centimeters. So that means 13 times 2 is 26. That means I will be able to double the size of this drawing easily onto this drawing paper. And again, we have 9.5 roughly across. And this one is about almost 21. So again, let's round this up to 10 times 2 is 20. Yes, I can fit this onto this paper by doubling the size of this one. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to be making 2 centimeter squares now instead of 1 centimeter squares. And I need to make sure I have 9.5 of them across and 13 of them down. So just like before, I'm going to be measuring both sides. 2, and before I connect these, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So this full square needs to become a half square. So that's going to be 1 centimeter instead of 2 to keep my proportions correct. And then just like before, I'm going to be connecting the dots. When you're drawing your grid on your drawing paper, you are not going to be drawing your lines very dark because then they're going to be impossible to erase. So when you line things up, line it up carefully, make sure it's straight, and then you're just going to drag your pencil gently downwards, not even pressing. Because the moment you press, you're going to be making a mark that you won't be able to get rid of. So I'll do that all the way across here, and then we'll move on to the horizontals. And this little remainder edge I'm going to cut off right away so I don't get confused. And before I go any farther, just a quick count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and a half. Perfect. All right, moving on to the horizontals next, and I should have 13 of these down. And connect the dots once more. Once again, making sure my lines are super light and easy to erase. Alright, so my grid is done, and I'm again going to do a quick count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So I know I've got to trim off the bottom here, so I don't end up with any distortion. And I know it sounds silly to count the squares, but you would be surprised at how often people make mistakes like that. So there we go. We have an original image and a drawing paper that now have the exact same number of squares imposed over top of them. And the next part just involves you going square by square and copying what you see in the square. So I'm going to start again up here. I'm not going to draw all the details in the grass. I'm not going to shade or add like the textures on the dog's nose. All I'm going for here are the basic outlines. So here I'm going to go 3 across, 1 down. That's where the ear starts. And I'm going to notice where on that line does it start. It's about 1/3 of the way. I'm going to make a mark, and then it crosses over this line at about half. And then I see the little negative space in the corner there. So I'm going to use this very logical method to draw slowly, square by square. And if you're the type of person who gets easily lost, which is understandable, there are a lot of squares, what you can consider doing is numbering and lettering. Have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 on the top, and then A, B, C, D, E, F, G, etc. on the side, and that can help keep you oriented. Because the only real way to mess this up is if you get lost. And then again here, I'm moving down to there. When you're done drawing the basic contour lines, it is now time to go in and erase your grid. Support the paper with one hand while you erase with the other to avoid wrinkling your page. Now, erasing the grid can be a time-consuming process, and if you accidentally drew your grid lines too dark, sometimes you don't get rid of it completely. So one thing I do like to do is, rather than taking all the time to carefully erase the grid, I will use either a light table or hold my drawing up, sandwich it to another paper through a window, and just trace the drawing onto a brand new sheet of paper. And sometimes I find that a little bit faster than carefully erasing the grid, and I get better results. But you can make either one work. And there we go. That is how to transfer a drawing using the aid of a grid.